Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to NextGenKarate.com, our YouTube show and podcast. This is episode 6 already.
Yeah.
We promised you a couple episodes ago that we were going to debut some intro music because we need something on our show to make it sound cool. Option number 1 for everybody is going to be coming up soon, but we want you guys to comment, to write us, to text us, to let us know which ones you like, and whichever one gets the highest votes is the one that's going to make the show. Yeah. Should we play number 1?
Yep.
Let's do it. I like it.
Yeah.
It's not complicated.
No.
It gives a good energy. Number 2, this one's called Blue Sea. Not bad. What do you think?
Yeah, that one's pretty good.
Number 3 coming up. That one's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I like the whispering. We'll have to change the whispering to them saying Next Gen Karate though. Number 4. So there you have it.
Yep.
4 options.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see which ones you guys like best. Again, it's just an intro just to get the show kicked off and going. I think we're going to have to need add some sound effects and stuff into later. But for now, we're just going to focus on the intro music. Help us out. You can reach us on the web at nextgenkarate.com.
Yep. You can also, our email is nextgenkarateshow@gmail.com.
Facebook and Twitter, both at NextGen Karate. So hit us up. We look forward to hearing from you, picking our intro music that we can debut next episode. Should we get on to episode 6?
Yeah, let's get
do it.
started. Hey everybody, today's episode we're looking at coaching. So we're looking at some of the top coaches in BC, and today we're interviewing Sandeep Gill.
There's nobody better. Top coach in BC, Karate Canada rep. His dojo, I mean, I think we'll talk about it when we intro, but his dojo has been the top performing kumite dojo at the national championships for a long time coming. So when you wanted to get somebody on the show that was a strong coach, so there's nobody better in BC right now.
Yeah.
He's the Karate Canada regional coach. So basically what that means is athletes who are made the provincial teams, they made the national team, they're going to be representing Canada at international events. In that area, they all train under Sensei Sandeep.
Yeah. He has 50 national individual gold medals from his dojo alone.
Yeah, which
that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. 3 World Cup or K1 medals. So that's the highest kind of Premier League of karate. And his athletes have won 3 medals there.
They also have 2 Pan Am Games medalists from his dojo.
And Junior Pan Am's extremely successful. 13 medals so far at that event.
Yeah, and he was 2010's Karate Canada Coach of the Year.
So everybody, with no more delay, we welcome Sensei Sandeep Gill. How's it going?
It's fantastic. How are you guys?
We're doing great. Thanks for taking the time out of your early Sunday morning. Daylight savings, so we gave you an extra hour, I guess.
Much appreciated. Thank you so much.
So yeah, we just wanted to get you on the line to maybe give a little bit of inspiration to instructors out there and athletes out there on your system. So your dojo in itself is Burnaby Karate Academy.
That's right.
You run some satellite dojos as well in partnership with other instructors.
Yeah, some of my students that have been training a long time, they opened their own dojos and we supported them along the way. One is Sensei Matt Bickle, who's assistant coach on the BC team. So he's a really awesome coach, and he's got a ton of great students as well. And then Sean Dillon, one of the guys that won a medal at the Pan Am Games, he's got a couple of dojos, and he's very self-sufficient, and he's a hard worker, and he's developed a lot of awesome athletes as well too. So those are the dojos that I won't say I'm most proud of, but I feel like we helped along the way. And then, so here and there, some other sensei send their kids or students to us as well too. So we like to work with a lot of other dojos as well. get together and train.
Yeah, so your dojo is a little unique in the karate world, I suppose. You kind of run your own system and it's a kumite only dojo, so you don't do any kata. Maybe you could just explain a little bit about your system, why you do that, how'd you come up with that, did you follow another model? But yeah, it's a little unique, so maybe people can learn a little bit from it.
Well, I came from a dojo that was skewed to kata. So I was from a kata dojo, but I really like sparring. I wasn't terribly good at it. So when I turned 18, 19 years old, I went on an adventure and trained at a lot of different dojos, exposed myself to a lot of different people, and I just got excited, started to learn more and more. And the dojo was about 6 or 7 years old, and we were still doing 50% kata, 50% kumite. And then just a couple of things happened, some related to sport and some not. So the sport concept was, if you want to be an international level competitor or even a national level competitor in karate, and medal in both kata and kumite, I think it requires about 6 to 7 hours a week minimum per discipline. So I kind of explain it to non-karate people, like, you can do ice skating, figure skating, and you could do speed skating, and you both wear skates and you're both on the ice, but the energy systems, the strategies, the training are completely different. And I find that kata and kumite are completely different. And when it came down to the sports program, I couldn't dedicate the time to excel at both of them. So we had to make a choice. And ultimately, what also happened is, like, we have a lot of kids that have done karate with us. And over the years, kata is a beautiful thing and it's an art. And I actually love it. I do enjoy kata and I do practice it. But, for some kids, they get their black belts and they've trained with me for 10 years and that's great. But we have some kids that do karate for 2 years or 1 year or 3 years. And I wanted to make sure that they gain something from that. And, for those guys, it's not necessarily that they spent 1, 2, or 3 years doing kumite, but they spent a lot of time doing self-defense and break falls. And, I want to make sure that if there's a confrontation at school, on their way to school, in any part of their life, they have learned a skill that can save them and make them stronger. And so kumite isn't the option. So when we're a kumite only dojo, we're a kumite only dojo for competition. But as a dojo itself, we're a martial arts dojo. So we want our students to understand, like, our students do a lot of break falls and takedowns, and our students do a lot of self-defense scenarios. And 7, 8, 9-year-olds can escape from a headlock and a bear hug and being choked. And so that's kind of, you can't just do kumite nonstop 24/7. You need to do martial arts. And we just haven't exposed our kids to too much kata. We focus more on, like, the combative parts of karate. So so.
And was that like, did you face any kind of backlash or resistance from other clubs who are looking at that model and not understanding what you're trying to accomplish, and they're coming at you like, oh, you can't do that, that's not karate, that's not martial arts? Or was it an accepting society?
Well, it's not a was, it's kind of still is. We still deal with people that have a strong opinion about it. And and in all fairness, they love karate and they love the kihon, the kata, and kumite, and they love all the elements, and I don't blame them. I think that's awesome. It's just, there's some dojos that only do kata and they don't really focus on kumite, and that's okay too. Yeah. And you know what? Like, we respect those individuals. So, we're pretty open to everybody, and if they have an opinion about it or they disagree with it, they're welcome to share it with me. But most of the time when people talk to me and actually understand what we do, usually we find some common ground and we work together. And, we're all specialists. And, some people, they specialize in traditional karate. And our goal is to get medals for Canada, to get medals for BC, to get medals for a dojo. In the sports environment, that's really important to us. So we don't feel there's so many great people that do great kata, and they do kata and kumite. They're leading the charge on that. We're just trying to win medals in kumite and compete with the rest of Canada and represent our country and put the maple leaf on our gi. And that's something we've done some importance to.
Yeah, so in your dojo, you have Target National Medal Results. What's that about?
Target National Medal Results.
Yeah, basically, I think when we've talked before, and I remember at nationals you saying that the expectation, your goal is to have this result, and if you don't have that result, being a high level coach, you sort of abandon the system and then rethink it from the start and build it again from the ground up if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Is that accurate? Or?
It's extremely accurate, and I was a very competitive person. And so we would go to nationals like in 2008, 2009, and we would get great results. Like one year we got 7 individual gold medals in kumite and a total of 26 medals in kumite at the nationals. And I finished and we were at the banquet, and I couldn't stop thinking about the silvers that we should have turned into gold and the fourths that we should have turned into thirds. And I thought, I'm missing the importance of sport, and it's the process, it's the enjoyment, and I had the wrong approach, and I didn't like that. So what I did is I came up with targets that I thought were fair, and realistic, but also challenging as well too. And we hit that; those were our targets, and then I told myself that if we reach our targets, then we should celebrate. And, we probably make some mistakes. We probably don't hit every mark the way we want to, but we need to celebrate our work. So that's where the targets came from. And then this year, for example, we had, so our target eventually became, we wanted 5 individual gold medals at nationals. So this year we got 4. And we also received 5 silver medals. And, 1 was a decision, lost in final by decision. 1 lost in the last second. 1 was up by 2 points and got a head kick in the last 6 seconds of the match. And so we could have easily had 7 gold medals, but we ended up with 4. And we actually did rip apart the program and started change the way we taught every class. And the results have been really good in the sense that the athletes are really happy. They're noticing a big change. And we that happened in February. And then in Croatia at the World Cup, Melissa got a gold and Izzy got a bronze. And then we got some results at Junior Pan Am. So we haven't seen the results of our work at nationals yet, but what we have seen is just more happiness, better development of our technique. And so it's kind of a system that works for us. And every couple of years we don't hit our target, and we do a massive overhaul, and usually it works. So we're pretty happy with that.
Yeah, what I like about that, and what I like about your system, knowing you, is that you're not a guy just to sit back on those results and then go, okay, well, I know what I'm doing. My athletes know what they're doing. We're just going to ride the wave. You bring in constantly extremely high level people into your dojo, into our province, and invite some other clubs to partake. You recently brought in Tom Scott from Team USA. I guess as a coach, it's maybe you could talk a little bit on the importance of constant development and seeing what's out there and seeing what's new and then adapting it into your program.
Yeah, I mean, kind of what I said before. The benefit for me is I never was a superstar or really great at kumite, so I always am open to learning new things. I'm never set in my ways and saying oh, I did this and it worked, so it's going to work for everybody else. And part of what happened this year with nationals is, when you're revamping a program, you need to open yourself up to new ideas. So we brought in Luis Plumache from Alberta, who's originally a world champion from Venezuela, Tom Scott. We continue to have other top-notch people coming in. I think we had 7 guest instructors at our dojo between nationals and now. Wow. 2 from Quebec, Gab Silla, who's a fitness coach, and Gerard Lozier, who's part of NCCP, and so constantly just trying to expose ourselves, and just, you know, when you're creating your own recipe, you need to have inspiration and you have to have knowledge. And when you bring in these kind of people, you get both, you know, like everybody's inspired at the end of a weekend because they've seen something, they've, you know, even if it's the same thing that we teach, it's you know, shown in a slightly different way, and you know, it takes off from there. So yeah, I don't know, that's Budo, that's martial arts, you know, you never stop learning, whether you're 15 or 55. So yeah.
Another thing we talked about is in your actual class, I mean, you hinted on it a little bit before, this people have their kata focus and their kihon focus. When we brought you out a couple months ago to run a seminar here for our dojo, and you explained it to me in a way that was, you need to have fundamentals, you need to have your basics for kumite. And in the actual class structure leading up to competition and hard level or higher level training, that you don't run that many matches. It's all about drills. So maybe just for those instructors who don't kind of understand that fundamental kumite, you could just talk a little bit about that to let everybody know.
Yeah, well, it was actually a result of a fairly silly conversation I had with a friend from Japan, like I would say 15 years ago plus. We were talking about karate, and he told me, he says, "You have no kumite basics." And I said, "What do you mean?" And, you know, like, he said, "Well, there's kihon for kata and there's kihon for kumite, but you're using your kihon for kata and trying to use it towards your kumite, and that's not going to work." And I was very lucky. We had, you know, Ron Bagley was a very modern fighter for his time and a great coach, and he kind of implemented a lot of combinations and systems for us that were great, but we were kind of missing the footwork basics and just strategy basics, and like Oliva Sensei from Spain kind of filled in the strategy basics for us, and we've been working and trying to fill in the basics for a lot of the components of sparring, because when you do kata and you do kihon, like a Zenkutsu Dachi, stepping in Zenkutsu Dachi is not something that's done in kumite. Shikodachi or Kibadachi is not done in kumite. So we have to develop our footwork, our basics, our base for that. And so that's kind of, once we figured that out, we had a lot more success. Right. And then in sport in general, like if you do NCCP or you follow the coaching structure, for most sports closer to competition, you want to create a game-like scenario. So, you know, like if you're a hockey player, maybe you work on stick handling 2 months before the big game, but, you know, the day before the big game, you're not practicing stick handling, you're you know, practicing plays or scrimmage or something closer to game-like scenario. But karate, we're still a combat sport, and if we run full matches and mirror it closer to competition, we have to turn down the intensity. So and our intensity and speed, we're also a speed sport, so we have our intensity and speed at 100%, but we control the combinations, we control the scenario so that we minimize the injuries. So that's kind of the idea behind, you know, we do a lot of drills so we could keep everybody safe, but keep the intensity really high. And, you know, the week or 2 weeks before the competition, we rarely have an exercise that lasts longer than 30 or 45 seconds because we want it to be at the top level. So that hopefully explains that.
So what traits do a lot of good athletes share? Like, are they hardworking? Do they listen really well? Things like that.
Athletes don't listen very well. That's not. I wish that would be something that I could say. But great athletes believe in themselves, and maybe that's why they don't listen very well sometimes. So you know, they get somewhere by following a certain plan, and you know, as coaches, we're always trying to change and mold and you know, make it better that we think, but you know, it takes a lot of faith for someone to say, well, I've gotten to this level by doing this, and this person's telling me to change it up completely and do something else. So I feel like the belief in themselves is great. And, you know, the top athletes, they do push themselves, and they do incorporate what they learn, and and they go towards that. And you know, it's also a lot of self-motivation because, you know, we're at the dojo, but the champions, they work a lot on their own. You know, they lift their weights, they do their cardio, you know, they make sacrifices. So if I were to say what traits would make a good athlete, I would say belief in themselves, determination, dedication. So they put in their hours. And, you know, I don't know about the rest of, you know, the karate world, but for us, our best athletes are really good people too. So they, you know, they value their families and their dojos, and they give back. And, you know, that's been really important for me too, because sport is supposed to be fun. And, you know, it's really fun working with good people and kind people, and it makes the pursuit of sport worthwhile. And that's kind of what I think I like.
So say there's people out there, say I'm a dojo instructor and I'm really content in my world. I'm maybe a big fish in a small pond, but I have a lot of those athletes that you talked about who are hardworking and dedicated, and they have that belief in themselves that they want to get into competition. And I'm not a competition club. How would you advise those clubs to make that transition? Would you say, like, get together with other dojos? Would you say send your athletes to these dojos? Would you bring in proven coaches into your system? Would you just advise them to attend tournaments and then adapt your own programming? But there's people out there who are not scared but hesitant of the competitive world, but they have athletes that now see that karate is in the Olympics.
And want to get out there and compete and
for sure
have their shot at it.
Yeah. So how would you advise those instructors to support those athletes?
Well, when our dojo, we were first starting out, some like Matt Bickle and Andrea Maekawa and Cody Martin, who, like, these guys all went on to a lot of success. We would get in my car and drive 45 minutes to Dr. Lang's dojo so we could train with Marshall. Or they would jump in my car and we would go to Ron Bagley's dojo for training. So for me, I always thought if I exposed my students to the best, you know, the results would show for themselves. And none of my students ever left me. Like, you know, when I exposed my students to these things, they never said, wow, this is, you know, and they could have, because Ron was a really good coach and Marshall was a really good coach. And, you know, they never left me, but they thanked me. They said, thank you for exposing me to this, and thank you for sharing that. And so if I was an up and comer now and trying to do that, I would do the same thing. I would find people that I could train with wherever they are locally, and I would get together with them, because you know, most dojos only have a few athletes, and that's normal, right? Like, if you have 100 students, maybe you have 10 or 15 that are interested in competition. But, you know, if you pool your resources together, you know, and there's 2 or 3 dojos with 10 or 15 people that are interested, there's a better opportunity. And I've discovered in, like, Ontario, there's 2 or 3 dojos that are really strong, and they get together and they have tournaments and clinics, and they brought in world champions that they would never have been able to bring in by themselves, but by teaming up, they've been able to do that. So, you know, when you start competition, you take your lumps. Even like in our dojo, we have these bright young kids that see all their senpais and senseis that have won medals and are, you know, super kumite athletes, and they go to their first tournament and usually they lose, and usually they lose by a lot. And, you know, that's part of the process. So no matter where you're from or what dojo you're from, when you want to excel at a sport, it's going to be tough at the beginning. And just, you know, if you're passionate about it, there's so many things you could do. You could start an extra class for the competitive kids on a weekly basis. You can expose your kids to other kids in the region. You can bring in like all the things that you suggest, plus just having a long-term vision. You know, like, if you want to win in competition, the first tournament I ever brought my students to was the Sato Cup in 2000, and I brought 17 kids. And I thought, you know, the dojo I was with previously, if I brought 17 kids, we probably would have got 12 or 13 medals. And, you know, we brought 17 kids and we got 1 bronze medal. And I was, you know, I thought these kids were way better than that. And, you know, the difference between, like, we could have gone two ways. We could have done our own thing, or we push, and we ended up pushing, and like the results have been really good. But there's dojos out there. Whenever I think that we're good or we're strong, I think of in Ontario, Roman Saltykov is like, he's got great students, and Nassim's got great students. And then I think of dojos around the world, in France and Spain, and we talk about, we've got 2 Pan Am Games medalists, but they've got posters on the wall of how many world champions they've developed, or world medalists. So, like you just have to take your lumps and keep going, and you're gonna hit your stumbling blocks somewhere, but keep trying, and you'll get through them.
Yeah.
I like that. So in your past experience of coaching and talking about these new coaches coming up, what would be some common mistakes you see from coaches, like either sitting in the chair at a competition or in a system? One example would be like if your athlete's in there that you're yelling at them at stuff, what not to do, like, oh, don't do that, as opposed to highlighting the stuff that they're doing good. But what sort of do you see out there as when you're in the chair next to the other guy on some things that coaches probably should work on improving?
Well, some of the lessons I learned the hard way is that, as coaches, the referees will make a lot of mistakes, but it's not our job to point out every single one of them. And earlier on, like, there was an expectation that we were really tough on the refs, and like, you should have caught this and you should have caught that. And then I realized, like, there's human error. At the World Championships, there were still things that got by, and these are the best refs in the world. So if you teach your athletes not to worry about the refs, then they'll be able to handle it. But if you're in the chair and you're screaming at the refs, or that call was terrible, your athlete starts to believe that, and your athlete starts to lose faith. And you have to, like, we tell our athletes, we say the best coach for you is the referee, because when you're too short on your technique, the ref will tell you. When you make contact, they'll tell you. If your technique is not good enough, they will tell you everything they're looking for. So use them as a resource. Don't try to battle the referee, because you've got to battle the person in front of you, and that's the most important thing. But that comes from the coach sometimes. We get emotional. We can't get in there and punch and kick. So, getting our emotions under control. There's the odd athlete that we have that they don't have the fire. Like, they're very competitive for training, to lift weights, to do that, but they don't have that internal fire for the match. So sometimes you do have to, pump them up and scream at them. But, it's never because we're angry or because we're too emotional. It's because we've made a decision that this is what the athlete needs. And that's something I think is really important. And what you said, something like, there's a guy, Adam Kovac from Hungary, and he was here in 2008. And one of the things he told me, and it stuck with me, is like, he said when his coach tells him don't hit the head, just instinctively he would go and hit the head. He didn't know why, but he's like, it happened. But he said that eventually coaches like figured that out, and they would say attack the body, and so they gave the positive action, and he was able to respond with a positive result. So that's something we're really conscious of, right? Because as a coach, which one of our students hasn't had 2 or 3 contact penalties in a match? It happens all the time. And we have a lot of time to practice, attack the body, keep your hands up, play defense, versus don't attack the head. And we create panic within our athletes. So if we give them a roadmap, then it's good. And the higher up you get into competition, the less you can actually coach. Like, if you go to Pan Am's or higher, if it gets too loud, sometimes your athlete doesn't even hear what you're saying. So you have to kind of just be in the chair and let the athlete feel like they're supported. And with the cards now, you play a big role in determining when to use a protest card, right? So that's become something new in the last year or two that I think has become one of the most important things that we can do. So yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to give advice, because all the mistakes that I'm talking about are all the mistakes that I've made many times, and I'll continue to make. So I guess that's the don't put it on record that I won't yell at a referee or get emotional, because I will. But you know, like 9 out of 10 times, I've learned to make that into a positive instead of making a fool out of myself or out of a referee, which is what we don't want to do.
But that's in line with all karate training is constant development and constant work, and you're always still going to make those same mistakes. So you just have to try to be better every now and then, as best as you can.
Yeah. So along those lines too, what are some common mistakes that athletes will make when competing?
Well, you know, one mistake that happens a lot is athletes try to control everything because, you know, when you control things, you feel like you can get ahead. But karate competition is hard to control because, you know, sometimes people get a bye and they get injured and, you know, sometimes the draw changes and you get pumped up to fight. You know, I'm so pumped to fight you, Lauren, today. And I spent 2 hours getting ready to fight you. And then all of a sudden somebody pulls out, they flip up the draws and I'm not fighting anymore. I'm fighting someone else. And, you know, that I find that, you know, if you try to control the time or like, you know, you think you're getting up at 2, but then you end up going up at 4 and then you get frazzled by that. And so I think to give up, like to try to control everything, I find is a big mistake. I think if you give up control on everything on the outside and control everything that you can do, that would be something that I would recommend for athletes. And I see that's something that we try to focus on a lot because we don't want them making those mistakes. Yeah, I mean, and other mistakes is by athlete. I don't think there's too many common problems that all athletes have. Again, it goes down to, you know, some athletes believe in themselves, but 2 minutes before the match starts or 5 minutes or one day, they start to have doubts, especially, you know, this is a show for younger people. You know, you may go to 30 tournaments, you know, some really small, some bigger. And then you'll go to your first big tournament like nationals. And then when you have nationals, you know, there's specific trainings for them. Like people are asking you how you're doing. And all of a sudden you get all the support that you've never had before. And, you know, sometimes that gets a little bit worrisome as well too. And athletes aren't able to handle that very well because, you know, you're always on your own. You're always, you know, if you're going to a tournament, you know, in Kelowna, for example, it's not a big deal. Saturday morning, you wake up, you get your gi ready, or you get it Friday night. But you go to nationals, it's like a week-long preparation, and coaches and parents and everybody's asking you how you feel. You see your draw. Are you nervous? And so that's something I think like most younger athletes have an issue with that. And, you know, you just got to find the strategies to deal with it because all young athletes are dealing with the same thing at the same time too, right? So
that's a very good point. Lauren will be, if everything goes according to the way it should, you'll be representing BC at your very first nationals coming up in February in Quebec. So yeah, you'll be dealing with all that stuff that Sandeep just told you. But anyway, yeah, just one more question Lauren wanted to ask you, the one at the very end there. And then we'll let you go. I know we're going a little more than we said that we were going to talk to you for. But
okay,
no
so
worries.
What's the funniest thing you've seen happen while you're sitting in the coach's chair?
Funniest thing. I've seen a lot of funny things actually. Funny things. Well, it's based on your interpretation of funny, I guess. The World Championship one year, there was a match, and actually, I'll take it back. I'll give you another one because it was a BC athlete. There was a BC athlete at the Pan Ams, Junior Pan Ams, and he was fighting for bronze, and he was really nervous, and he was in the match, and he got hit, but not really hard. But I think the nerves kind of finally kept up to him, so he ran off the mat as quickly as he could, and he threw up in the garbage can. And I guess the referees thought he got kicked too hard or whatever. And he won the match for that, and it was hilarious.
No.
And that same tournament, I don't know if you guys remember Paulo from
Brian James.
Yeah, and he was at it was a Pan Am's that was an open air stadium, and I wasn't in the chair, but he was prepping for kata, and he was up next, and I guess he was ready to go, and he was doing his moves. and a bird pooped on his head. And he, without missing a beat, he grabbed the towel, wiped it off, and continued on with his kata. And we were all in the stands laughing away. And
unreal.
Yeah, so when I talk about focus and being in the zone, he was in the zone, because if that happened to me, I would have been grossed out like you wouldn't believe.
Exactly. Poor Paulo.
Yeah, so I feel like these are pretty funny. They were funny because they were so unusual, but I'll never forget those ones for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thanks very much for taking the time on the Sunday morning to talk to us a little bit, and hopefully get some information out to coaches and dojos and athletes who are aspiring down that competition path. Thanks again for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Rodney.
Yeah,
appreciate
of course.
it a lot.
Yeah. Have a great rest of the day.
Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. What a wealth of knowledge he is. The experience that he's had coaching competition, especially kumite, obviously is not paralleled by a lot of people in BC. And if you make the national team this year, that's somebody who you'll be working with to gear up towards Junior Pan Ams.
Yeah.
But you've taken a seminar with him before here in Kelowna. We brought him in. Did you enjoy that seminar?
Yeah, I did. It was really, it taught me a lot. Yeah.
Nice. Well, thanks again, Sandeep, for joining us today on episode 6. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit us up below, comment on our YouTube, comment on our Facebook, and just let us know. And they got to vote. Remember, they still got to vote for the best intro that you guys like. Okay, thanks very much. We'll talk to you guys next episode.